So one trade just went down that could spark a bit of a domino effect around the NFL because June 1st is a date a lot of teams look at to make some moves after the draft. In fact, multiple teams are reportedly interested in trading for a couple players that I will discuss in today's video. So I've got to talk about that, the 49ers being out one of their top wideouts for the foreseeable future, Tyreek Hill seemingly taking the humble approach for this season, and more right after. Alright, first up, after shopping him most of this offseason, the Philadelphia Eagles are reportedly trading edge rusher Bryce Huff to the 49ers for a mid-round pick. The deal can't be processed until after June 1st, but it's pretty much a done deal as Bryce Huff has already reworked his contract to help facilitate the trade. He cashed in after a career year with the Jets in 2023 where he had 10 sacks. He then signed with Philly on a 3-year, $51 million deal just last offseason. Things didn't go so well for him as an Eagle though, and he only had 2.5 sacks through 10 games before going on IR after getting surgery on his wrist. He came back in week 17 but hardly played and was actually a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl. So this seemed like a rare miss on a big swing for Howie Roseman. Not great, but it is worth noting that despite the 6th most snaps of any edge rusher on that defense last year, Huff still finished 3rd in pressures with 23. This does make a lot of sense for the Eagles though. They'll actually save around $8 million in cash and will free up over $15 million in cap space for this season and get a mid-round pick. So Howie Roseman more than makes up for the big swing and a miss just 1 year later. The Niners, meanwhile, will inherit the last 2 years of his deal and will owe him $7.95 million this season. This is a great get for the 49ers because Huff is going to be reunited with Robert Saleh, who was once again the defensive coordinator in San Francisco. He was the head coach of the Jets for 3 of Huff's 4 years there, so there's definitely familiarity. And get this, back in 2023, his last year under Saleh, Huff had a career-high 10 sacks, as I did mention earlier, but he also racked up 68 pressures on just 312 pass rush snaps. That was the best pressure rate in the NFL at 21.8% per Next Gen Stats. And funnily enough, he'll actually be the 3rd former Jet that the Niners have added in the last week, as they signed former Jets punter Thomas Morstead and former Jets linebacker Chaz Surratt. He'll join Nick Bosa on the edge, talking about Bryce Huff as well as Mykel Williams, who they drafted 11th overall. Huff is still just 27 years old, and now that he's reunited with a coach that knows him well, I honestly think he's more than capable of having a bounce-back season. All these recent moves seem to indicate that Robert Saleh has full autonomy over San Francisco's defense, and this will allow Shanahan to focus up more so on the offensive side of the ball and should help allow the 49ers to take a step up from last year, which, to be fair, is a pretty low bar. The move for Huff, though, was also a low-risk move, as the 49ers still have a bunch of cap space available to use at their disposal if needs be. They are 2nd in the NFL right now in available cap space. Sure, they had to move on from a bunch of quality starters in free agency in order to get to this point, but they kept some pillars around. They extended linebacker Fred Warner, tight end George Kittle, and of course, quarterback Brock Purdy. And from here, let's stay with the 49ers for a bit longer because it looks like they'll be without wide receiver Ricky Pearsall for the rest of OTAs, as he has reportedly tweaked his hamstring, according to Kyle Shanahan. He is unlikely to practice until training camp, and honestly, with a soft tissue injury like that, it is definitely best just to play it safe. Some 49ers fans are a bit concerned about Pearsall's injury history starting to stack up already. This is the 2nd hamstring tweak he's dealt with since getting drafted, and he also missed some of OTAs last year with a shoulder injury, and then obviously he missed 6 games of the regular season, the first 6 games after getting shot. That is not his fault at all. In fact, that has nothing to do with him being quote-unquote injury prone or anything like that. But even during OTAs last year, he was also dealing with another injury with his shoulder. Now, upon Pearsall's return, after healing up from the gunshot wound, that whole thing was pretty miraculous, to be honest with you. But he returned and started to heat up towards the end of the season, the last 3 games in particular, where he caught 18 passes for 247 yards and 2 touchdowns. He should be in for an increased role this season after the team traded away Deebo Samuel, plus Brandon Aiyuk is recovering from a torn ACL and MCL he suffered last year. Aiyuk, by the way, is doing well in his recovery, according to GM John Lynch, but they won't put him out there until he's ready. So despite being without 2 of their top 3 receivers at the moment, Lynch did downplay the injuries and said they're excited with their current receiver group, and he doesn't feel like they're in a position where they have to look for any outside help via free agency, or I guess a trade. You can't rule that out either. However, he then said he won't close the door on anything down the line. That receiving room, by the way, is made up of the aforementioned Aiyuk and Pearsall. Then they still have Juwan Jennings, who was flying around full speed at OTAs and reportedly was Brock Purdy's favorite target on Thursday. Then they have the former Rams wideout Demarcus Robinson, who they brought in as a free agent, as well as the speed demon Jacob Cowing. And while he's obviously not a receiver, it's worth mentioning that Christian McCaffrey is out there for OTAs and is, quote, as healthy as can be, per the words of Kyle Shanahan. He should be a huge boost for San Francisco's offense that really did miss him last year. Jordan Mason did a pretty good job, but CMC is just another level. He missed the first 8 games because of that calf/Achilles tendonitis. I think it even got into both legs at one point. It was kind of a weird, confusing ordeal, but he finally came back in week 10. Just a few games later, though, he sprained his PCL and missed the rest of the season. So Christian McCaffrey's definitely hoping to have a bit of a bounce-back season, as is Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill. He spoke with the media earlier this week, and revealed that he's lost 14 pounds and is down to around 183, which he says is a more comfortable playing weight for him. He got wrist surgery in the offseason, twice actually, to address an issue that he played through all of last year, but expects it to be good to go for the 2025 campaign. He's looking to improve both physically and mentally. He's been going to church and therapy more and said that's been helping him as he's been going through a divorce, which has been pretty tough on him. Tyreek was then asked by the media if he felt he still deserves to be a team captain this season after how last year ended. I'm sure most of you remember that Tyreek removed himself from the game week 18, basically quitting on his team once he realized they wouldn't be making the playoffs. And after the game, he basically gave the media the deuces and said he's out in regards to the team. He's since kind of apologized and reportedly has hashed it out with head coach Mike McDaniel. But anyway, back to the question. When asked if he felt like he still deserves to be a captain this season given how it ended last year, Tyreek said something that I do respect. He said, I got to prove myself. This OTAs, training camp, I got to prove myself. I got to show up different. The mindset's got to be different. I don't feel like I deserve it. And if I didn't get it, I wouldn't dwell on it. I wouldn't sweat it because I put myself in that position. So it sounds like Tyreek's been doing a bit of soul searching, and I know he's had his fair share of off the field issues throughout his career, and many people aren't the biggest fans of him. But if you're a Dolphins fan, the thought of a rejuvenated Tyreek should probably excite you, as he had back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons in his first 2 years in Miami. And then obviously us in Chiefs Kingdom know he can be a game changer out there on the field at any point in time. Now, we've also got to talk about another playmaker on that Dolphins offense, tight end Jonnu Smith. Adam Schefter reported yesterday that the Dolphins and Steelers have had trade discussions centered around him. He hasn't shown up for OTAs as he's been seeking a contract restructure, aka a pay raise, as he's heading into the last year of his deal and just had a career season. He popped off for 88 catches, 884 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Holy hell, that's a lot of 8s, but believe it or not, he actually set the Dolphins franchise record for a tight end in all 3 of those stats. So he's obviously looking to cash in and get a bump up from the $4.8 million he's currently scheduled to make this season. Now, the reason the Steelers make sense here as a trade partner is because their new offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, was the head coach of the Falcons in 2023 when Jonnu had his previous career highs in both catches and receiving yards. They could pair him up with Pat Freiermuth in the tight end room, and it would be yet another weapon at the disposal of who we all assume should be Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see if a deal does indeed get done here, or if Jonnu Smith ends up staying in Miami after all, because according to Schefter, that is his preferred outcome. He wants to stay in Miami on a reworked deal. He's not the only tight end involved in trade rumors, though, because it's been reported that multiple teams have reached out to the Falcons about Kyle Pitts. Jordan Schultz said that Atlanta would prefer to keep him, but he was told it would take at least a day 2 pick to even, quote, spark serious trade talks. So that means a second or third round pick, and that's just to open the door on trade discussions. The last big tight end trade we saw was probably back in 2022 when the Vikings sent the Lions a second and third round pick in exchange for TJ Hawkinson and a couple of fourths. I don't know if a team has given up that much for Pitts, but that was also a rare interdivision trade, so the Lions may have taxed them a little bit there. There's no question that Pitts hasn't lived up to the hype coming out of college. He was taken 4th overall in 2021, so that's very lofty expectations. Literally the highest drafted tight end in NFL history. His best season was his rookie year when he caught 68 passes for over 1,000 yards and just 1 touchdown. However, things have not bounced back since then. He missed 7 games in 2022 with a torn MCL. Then the last 2 years has been pretty disappointing, all things considered. He's had roughly 50 catches for over 600 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons. QB play has been inconsistent and played a role, so that didn't help things either. Just a little bit of defense for him. Now, Pitts is heading into the last year of his rookie deal. He's on his club option, so the Falcons are going to need to make a decision on him sooner rather than later. Do they plan on extending him? If not, then it may be best to get something for him now while they still can. Of course, they could head into the season with him, see how this year goes, and possibly trade him ahead of the deadline in early November, or even hit him with the franchise tag after the season is over, but who really knows what they'll decide at this point in time. Next up, the Vikings and general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah agreed to a multi-year extension today. They just extended head coach Kevin O'Connell back in January, so now they've got the 2 leaders of the organization locked up for the foreseeable future. They both were hired in 2022 and together have gone 34-17 over the last 3 seasons while making the playoffs twice. Sadly, they got knocked out of the wild card round in each time, but this is still a great head coach GM duo. They were one of the biggest spenders in free agency this go round as well, trying to build on that roster that won 14 games last season with Sam Darnold at the helm. But he's now a Seahawk, and JJ McCarthy is set to be QB1, a big reason why they did all the big spending. You got a quarterback on his rookie deal, so take advantage of it while you can. With that being said, Kwesi's knock by Vikings fan is he has struggled to draft quality starters. In his first 3 draft classes so far, not including this year, since obviously they haven't played yet, the only guy you can throw into that category, a quality starter, is their former first-round pick, wide receiver Jordan Addison. Obviously, they plan on trotting out JJ McCarthy as their starter, plus they have high hopes for their other first-round pick from last year in edge rusher Dallas Turner. So hopefully those couple of guys pan out to be quality starters as well, and then a couple emerge from the 2025 draft class on top of that. But hey, that's all I have for you today, so be safe this weekend, and with that, I'll see y'all next time.